Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well because today we're talking about music, and today we're continuing our deep dive into the discography of Canadian pop punk icons, Sum 41. We're looking at their fifth release, Underclass Hero. Here's the album here. You got Derek on the front there, spitting in black and white with the fire extinguisher, track listing on the back. I do like the pink and black. It's in some ways a dated look. Like this definitely is like that almost to the 2010s period for pop punk and stuff. You can tell when this was made, but it's an attractive look. I like it. So like I said, this is the fifth release by the band, put out on Aquarius Records in Canada, Ireland in the States, and elsewhere. It was recorded from November 2006 into March 2007, released July 18th of 2007. It's the first album with Brown Sound, Dave Bach leaving the band. So the band is a three-piece here. Um, he left to work on his solo work called Brown Brigade. So the last time we talked about Chuck was, you could hear his influence on it. I think he certainly brought that metallic influence. We're going to hear what it's like without having him around. So you're on the three-piece here. So you have Derek Whibley doing lead vocals, guitars, keyboards, piano. He's also the sole producer on this album. I was going through the credits. He's the only person listed as producer. There's other folks mastering. There's other folks doing other kind of production elements. He's the only producer listed, which is pretty cool. This album, whether I like the songs or don't like the songs, it sounds really good. It sounds really big. There's a nice soundscape on here. It sounds really well produced. Then you have Jason McCallan Cohn on bass and backing vocals, and Steve Jocks on drums and percussion. So, generally speaking, we're going to get to the track by track. We're going to go through that. But what do you have on here? I don't want to say this is where the wheels fall off the bus, because that would mean this album is terrible. There's nothing redeeming on here, but it feels like a big step backwards in a really good way. Let me explain. It's a step backwards in like an alternate universe where Chuck didn't come out. Does This Look Infected didn't come out. 2001 happens. They release All Killer No Filler, and then they would put this out a year or so later, a couple years later, and that would be fantastic. This feels like the perfected version of what they were putting out on All Killer No Filler. Um, the trouble there is All Killer No Filler comes out in 2001. This album came out, like I said, 2007. So that's that 6 year gap. So if you're part of their target demographic, Sum 41's target demo, so let's say you're 13, 14 years old when All Killer No Filler comes out, that means in 2007, you're 18, 19. Hopefully, probably dealing with, different things in your life. You're at sort of different mental states. And while I think a lot of the lyrics on here deal with that really well, I think certainly lyrically it's a lot more mature. Maybe the record label, when you're looking at the music videos and the singles chosen, don't put out that image. And I think it's actually the lead single, which is really problematic. The title track, which we'll get to, but especially the video, I'll talk about that. It's I mean, musically, it's kind of like a redux of Fat Lip, but even the music video, it's going for that kind of like, we don't want anyone to tell us what to do. Teachers are stupid and lame. And it's like by this point you're 18 or 19 and you're like, okay, well, I'm leaving school now. Maybe I'm going into university, in which case I'm paying to have a teacher to tell me what to do, or I'm entering the workforce, so I want to listen to the type of music that kind of speaks more to that aspect of my life. That said, there's actually a lot of really mature stuff on here that I do think is worth appreciating. So it's not really a bad album, it's just tonally a bit more shifted. It's also a little less of that kind of billabong, frosh, frat attitude from All Killer No Filler, and a bit more of that sort of sound-wise, but also image-wise, like I said, that more sort of saccharine, over-dramatic, over-emotional sound that was popular at the time. So it's a little confusing. So, like I said, the lead single was Underclass Hero. We'll get to that with the track by track, and then followed up by Walking Disaster. The third single, With Me, wasn't actually released until 2008. They also released March of the Dogs, which is a track on here, as an album preview single in April of 2007, because they wanted to give the fans a little something, something. So now let's go track by track on here. So there's 14 tracks. The album is 46 minutes long, so a bit longer for the band. And it's pretty, the sequencing is pretty good. There's a nice flow here. Again, whether or not I like a lot of the songs, album sounds great. It's got a really, really nice sound to it. So opening track, title track, Underclass Hero, feels like another version of Fat Lip. It's got that sort of like talking rap to it. Lyrically, it's about the like we don't care about authority figures sort of feel, and it doesn't really come across as being authentically held at that point. But it's got a really good catchy chorus. And again, it's the first track. You're like, oh, this album sounds real good. Um, it just kind of feels like the band copying themselves. And not in the way where when you hear something, you're like, yep, that could only come from that band, but it's like, yep, doing the same thing. Cool. Next track is Walking Disaster, which was that second single. And I like this one a whole lot more. It's really dramatic. The lyrics are more mature. And it's got a really big sound, really catchy guitars. I think if they picked that for the lead single, maybe we'd be in a people wouldn't have looked down on this as much. I say that this is actually their highest selling album, and a lot of people do. It's maybe polarizing. A lot of people really like it because of what it sounds like. A lot of people really don't like it because of what it sounds like. Like I said, I guess I'm kind of in the middle because I know what it sounds like and I see what they're going for. I don't necessarily like it, but they stuck the landing. I just didn't like what they were trying to stick. Um, so yeah, Walking Disaster, really great track. Track 3 on here, Speak of the Devil. It's a mid-tempo ballad that doesn't really hold my attention that well. The band is capable of doing really good ballads. They've done it before. I feel like sometimes they overdo the ballads. Don't know what to do with that. But the lyrics are really good. But it's kind of like, what am I listening to? It doesn't really fit so far as what we've got. Track 4, Dear Father. It feels like they're trying to do their own version of Blink-182's Adam song. And obviously those are both really lyrically, this song, Dear Father, and Adam's song are really, really touching emotionally and deal with serious subject matter. So I'm not trying to make light of that, but sonically and melodically, it follows a lot of the same beats. So I'm kind of wondering, like, obviously we're not using AI assisted songwriting here, but are we? Maybe. Is Derek a robot? He's never said he's not a robot. Derek, come at us. It's an okay song, but I'm like, we can do better. Track 5, Count Your Last Blessings. Sounds like it could have come right off of Fall Out Boy's album from around this time, or I think I'm not an expert at Fall Out Boy. I think they hit it big in 2005, 2006, so right before this album comes out. But it sounds like it could have come from that. It has like that really kind of like boom, bah, fast drum beats to it, which is fun. But again, it's like, well, I'm going to listen to Fall Out Boy, do Fall Out Boy. I want to listen to Sum 41 because of they have a unique sound and I want to hear that sound, not Fall Out Boy. But it's an okay song, especially if you like Fall Out Boy. Then Ma Poubelle is track 6. It's under a minute. It's a joke song where they speak the best French that they can. And it's okay. It doesn't really add much to the album. Track 7, March of Dogs, might be my favorite track on the album. It's a lot heavier, but not quite heavy in the way that it was like metal inspired, like we saw in Chuck or Does This Look Infected. More heavy in terms of like the heavy alternative rock that was popular in this time as well. In fact, I had to write this down. There's some political backlash that the band received for this song. So what did I write down? Sounds like something could have come from American Idiot in parts. And so the band, they faced political backlash, not because it sounds like they were ripping off Green Day. I mean, George Bush wasn't the best president. I don't know where he stood on pop punk bands. We can find out though, we can ask. He faced political backlash due to its radical being the track opposition to then President of the United States, George W. Bush. This led Whibley facing possible deportation in 2007 by a House representative minority leader. But nothing actually happened from that. But that's kind of cool. That's a claim to fame, I think. I like that. Track 8, The Jester. It also sounds like it comes from American Idiot, which I don't know my Green Day so well. Have they put out something after American Idiot yet? I know some people have hopped on I'm one of those people that like hopped off Green Day or an American Idiot because I was judgmental and had a lot of biases and things that you got to work through. But I know a lot of people hopped on, so I don't know if they released something or follow up at this point. I know that the singles kept coming out for that album. But Jester also sounds like more American Idiot, but maybe a little original. And you're like, okay, I think I see where we're going here. It took a bit to get going. Let's see where it goes. And then you hit track 9, which is with me. And then you're like, oh no. Yeah, for a little while we had like a pop punk romance up here in Canada. We had Avril Lavigne and Derek. You know, we've all heard Skater Boy. We know how the story goes. And they were a couple for a short period, and not a short period. They were a couple for a while, and their music sort of bled into each other. I remember hearing a lot of the songs on the radio and hearing Sum 41 thinking that sounds kind of like Avril Lavigne, and then you would hear an Avril Lavigne song that was a bit more upbeat or aggressive or something. You're like, oh, that sounds kind of like Sum 41, and you've had that happening for a bit. Again, not a bad track. It just feels maybe a little too poppy, a little too kind of well produced, or the instrumentation is a little bit different. You're like, this sounds like it would have been better on an Avril Lavigne album. Um, Track 10, Pull the Curtains, is a really okay song, but by this point, you're getting kind of tired. The a lot of this album, if you haven't picked up already, is just sort of feels like it's referencing other pop punk acts, and the stuff that's on here that's not doing that is very formulaic. So you're like, well, this sounds really nice. I'm getting kind of bored. Again, it's not a bad track. You're just kind of like, when is the good stuff? When does that start? And that is coming up actually. Track 11, King of Contradictions. It's a skate punk track, and it brings back the high energy. But by this point, you're like track 11 of 14 on a pop punk album where songs are like 3.5 minutes at most. Oh no, is it too little, too late? But it's a good song. I like it. Um, and then track 12, Best of Me. While track 11 may have been one of my favorite songs on the album, Best of Me is probably my least favorite track on the album. It's a ballad. It's overdone. Doesn't really sound that great. It's not fun to listen to. You want it to end, and it does eventually. And then it leads to track 13, which is maybe my third favorite track on the album, Confusion and Frustration in Modern Times. It just feels like a really good Sum 41 song. Like it feels like Sum 41 doing Sum 41, not ripping themselves off like some of the other stuff, but just like, yeah, this is what they sound like. Do more of that, do more of that. Because you only have one more track. Well, you have a hidden track too. Spotify calls it a bonus track. But as you can see, it's not listed on here. And because it's a CD, which I love back in the day, some bonus tracks on CDs would just be like later tracks. Some were just, the sun would end, go dark, and then the bonus track would start up again, and that was really cool. Anyway, Solemn Goodbye is very obviously the band trying to write their own Green Day's Time of Your Life, and they shouldn't do it because Time of Your Life is a rock music staple, rock music cornerstone. You can't really, it's one of those tracks, whether you like it or not, it's there and you can't really touch it. You can try, but then people are going to compare your version to the version that people already know and love, or people know and hate, but they hate it because they hear it all the time. So regardless of what you're going to try to do, just don't. It made me think of that part of The Simpsons where Homer is beating up the fake Hamburglar. Dog's crying, stop, he's already dead. That's kind of what I thought on here. And then there you have it, 14 tracks, 46 minutes long. Not the worst, but that's not a great thing to say in a review. Like, if that's the best thing you can say about an album, that is not the worst. It's a great follow-up to All Killer No Filler, and had this come out after All Killer No Filler, and then we get the sequence after where the band gets more and more metallic, that'd be cool. I'd be into that. But as it stands, you have Underclass Hero, which feels a little late. Like it's just not doing it, sadly. That said, there are some really good tracks on here. I think Underclass Hero is a really good song. It just feels like Although maybe I kind of prefer Underclass here more to just Fat Lip came first. But Walking Disaster is really good. I really like that. And Speak of the Devil is really good. And King of Contradictions and Confusion and Frustration. There are a handful of great tracks on here, just generally speaking. We're not picking up the steam that we were putting out on the last two albums, where we had this really cool, heavy metallic sound, as well as some really good songwriting dealing with serious stuff. And we've kept a lot of that on here, but we've glossed it over, and it's just not as great as it could be. I feel so bad. I want to end on a high note, but I don't got one. That said, 41's still a really cool band. I really, really like them. I really like a lot of the songs on here. So that's the high note I'm going to pick to end on. Next up, Screaming Bloody Murder, which sounds really cool. And I've been trying to find it. It's not easy to find. I don't know why. I can find like all of their other albums except that one. But I will find it. We will physically collect the Sum 41 catalog together, mark my words. That's it. Have a great day. I hope you're enjoying this Sum 41 deep dive because I really, really am. Catch you next time. Bye.